Hey crew, it's Bit, and I'm back with another Bible study. We are hopefully going to be finishing up Genesis today. We're going to be ending the first book and starting the second one on the next one, but this is where we're at. If you are unfamiliar with what we're doing here in Genesis, if you are new to the channel, you don't know what's going on, I have a different take than most people. You should start at the top. There's a playlist. Start at the top, see where I'm at. You may or may not agree with me. I am perfectly fine with that, but I am insisting on a literal reading of the Bible. We are reading through and we are not looking at it with certain lenses on. And if that offends you, if your feelings are going to be hurt by that, then you probably should not be here. But if you're okay with just reading the Bible and seeing what it says and not necessarily knowing what it has to read before we read it, then let's finish up and see what's going on. Because these last three chapters have a lot of consistency errors, and that's a consistent theme in Genesis. And the reason for that is an amalgamation of a multitude of stories. I'm not going to hammer that home in here, so I'm doing it right here at the beginning. It's a bunch of different stories that Moses used to pull all the people together because they knew the stories already. There's a lot of confirmation of that in these three chapters, but there's not a lot of consistency in the overarching story so far. We've seen a lot of inconsistent errors as we went through Genesis. We will see some more through here. Let's look at Genesis 48. When we left off in Genesis 47, Joseph had just acquired for Pharaoh all the lands, all the livestock, and all the people, except for the priests, like their slaves, already, in 47. And sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he set out with his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And when Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, again, that's the two names right there. The fact that it's Jacob here is Israel there is a consistency error that other people explain away because, whatever. But anywhere else where God changes the name, it's used that way for all the way through, except for here where it keeps flip-flopping. It's because this was more recent memory. This is the part that they remember closely. And so some of them remember Israel, some of them remember Jacob, and so it flip-flops. That's just what's going on here. I've shown that so far. I'm not going to hammer it home. "Your son Joseph has come to you." Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me and told me, 'Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you. I will make you a multitude of peoples, and I will give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession.'" Okay, so what we have here is the confirmation that Israel is the land of promise, even though they were just given the Egyptian land. And it is much, much more fertile and bountiful than Canaan, right? Much more so. If God was going to bless somebody with land, then the Nile River, as opposed to the Canaanite Valley, I find a hard time, just looking at the geography and looking at the flourishment. And yes, there are seasonal differences and what you can grow differences, but out of the two, if I were to choose, it would probably be the Nile Valley, like the Nile floodplains. Yes, you have to adapt to that, but okay, it's well blessed. So, they're going to go back to Canaan. Okay, well, let's load up and go. You're about to die. Everybody's good. We're healthy. We have this land that we just gave away, and we're slaves, so that's why we can't, right? Okay. "And now your two sons born to you in Egypt, before I came to you here, shall be reckoned as mine." Why? That son is alive. Why does not he get a larger portion of the inheritance that he passes on to his two children in its entirety? Why does it get split apart? That doesn't make sense. Because they needed it to fit for the overarching pulling in the stories, right? This is one of those details that had to be in place, and so yes. But it doesn't make sense. "Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are mine." There's another interesting phrase. Why those two, right? Are they adopted? We didn't get that. There's a lot of story here that isn't told to us. We don't get that knowledge. They had that knowledge. It's contained in other books. Books that were pulled out of this book so that you couldn't read them, so that you wouldn't have the knowledge that is contained in those books. Like, there is reasons why they pulled the book of Enoch out of the Bible. There are reasons why all of those books have been pulled out. It is to keep knowledge from you that you were supposed to have, that they didn't want you to have. And by they, I mean the people in charge of the religion. That includes the Pharisees and the Sadducees. That includes the Roman Catholic Church, and that includes the writers of the Gospels. And so what we're doing here is showing that, right? The great message of the book is that God's will is shown in every single book. His will for you is to love. Period. It is to love your neighbor and to love your God. That is your entire purpose on this planet, to do those two things. And so anyway, so Jacob takes Joseph's kids and says, nope, that's not your kids, that's my kids. Okay, that's weird, but we'll just chalk it up to some cultural differences. We'll let it slide, because I'm not really letting it slide, but we'll just let that slide. And so your two sons are mine, just like Reuben and Simeon are mine. That implies adoption. We don't have that story. Any children born to you after them will be yours, and they shall be called by the names of their brothers in the territory they inherit. Well, that's weird. They will be called by the names of their brothers in the territory they inherit. Why did they not receive an equal portion of this inheritance? Why did they not receive part of that? If they are the brothers of Joseph, Joseph so far has been the only faithful one out of the lot. Why is not his seed the blessed seed? Because you need to bring in Judah, and because you need to bring in Levi, and all of these other tribes need to be accounted for. So we have the story of Genesis. We're going to do the Enuma Elish at some point. They'll be called by the name of the brothers in the territory they inherit. Now, as for me, when I was returning from Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died along the way in the land of Canaan, some distance from Ephrath. So I buried her there, beside the road to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And when Israel saw the sons of Joseph, he asked, who are these? And Joseph said to his father, they are the sons God has given me in this place. So, again, we have a timing issue here, right? This should be prior to him. Like, it didn't make sense that he would say that if he didn't know that he had kids. And then, like, the whole thing, it's just a timing issue. It doesn't add up. It's in there just so that it's accounting for something that is known. So, please bring them to me so that I may bless them. And now Israel's eyesight was poor because of old age, and he could hardly see. And Joseph brought his sons to him, and the father kissed them and embraced them. I never expected to see your face again, Israel said to Joseph, but now God has let me see your children as well. And then Joseph removed his sons from his father's knees and bowed face down. And Joseph took both of them, with Ephraim in his right hand, towards Israel's left hand, because Israel is over here, right? And so Joseph has Ephraim here and Manasseh here in his left hand, towards Israel's right hand, and brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and put it on the head of Ephraim, the younger, and he put his left on Manasseh's head. So the father, or the grandfather, does like this to put his hands on his head. And then, although Manasseh was the firstborn, then he blessed Joseph and said, may the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a multitude upon the earth. We're about to pop something open here, guys. Did y'all see that? The angel, the messenger who has redeemed me from all harm, right? To act as a kinman, or the next of kin, and from evil, We have seen guidance throughout the book of Genesis, and we've talked about how there are two factions, right? That's commonly accepted. I'm not off on a tangent with that. There is a commonly accepted, there was the fall, and these angels fell. And there are commonly accepted that there are angels still in the service of God. That is not controversial. The only thing I have controversial is that I say whenever there is a required sacrifice given, all of a sudden the other side pops up and stops it. So I think that this whole sacrifice your son thing came from the wrong side. Because we see in the beginning of Genesis that the sacrifice was not required. It was a freely given sacrifice. There's a lot of timing issues. I will definitely grant you that. But the fact that there are timing issues still, like even then, the reason that the one was accepted and the other one wasn't was that it was a willfully given one versus one that was seen and done with envy. Even if it wasn't like a overly prideful envy, it was still done because I saw this, I feel it's expected of me, and it wasn't an accepted sacrifice. The only accepted sacrifice was the one freely given. And so from that point forward, the whole of everything is wrong. Everything that has been given forward from sacrifice your son on this altar and the substitution of the ram, all of that, everything from that point forward has been influenced by both factions, and we can see it. You can look at the fact that the blood sacrifice and the way that these people act, and we're going to get into that real quick, the way that these people act. This is the God that is blessing them. Who is the God that is blessing them? He doesn't say, he says the angel who. He says, may the God before whom my fathers Abram and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all the life, the angel. That's who his God is the angel. The one who has let him know, who has guided him. But the enemy can guide as well as the other, like the actual messengers. I don't know for sure. I am speculating. I am fully aware of that. But it seems obvious just reading the text. If you just read the text and you don't put into it that it has to end this way, if you even look at it with the eyes of God created everyone, I truly believe that everyone is a very tiny piece of God. Nobody is a God, but we are all very tiny pieces of God. I believe Jesus said that, and I believe that. And so if that is true, then there is no chosen people. The chosen people are the ones who walk in his name and the ones who act in the way that he asks us to act, to love the Lord thy God with all of their heart, soul, and might, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That is the sum of the law. That is the whole of the law. That is all. And all of these things that I can do, you can do. He told us plainly. And yet we add all the extra. We add the Deuteronomies, and we add the Leviticuses, and we add all of these extras that really don't make a difference. It all comes down to that, because if you're walking in those two things, that covers all 10 commandments. And if you're walking in those two things, that covers the entirety of the Bible. Everything you are called to do is summed up in those two things, and that is truth. And so, then we get to the blessing, and here's another part where I get much more controversial than other people. I believe in magic. I believe that God gave us magic, and I believe that magic is the manipulation of the magnetic forces of creation itself. The very fibers of creation are magnetics. And while I cannot manifest a fireball, I can move energy around. I can feel it. Other people can feel it. And yes, that is anecdotal. Yes, that is subjective. I fully understand that, but I can do it. And so I don't have to convince you I'm right when I know that I am. The blessing comes down to this. You have one hand that goes with energy out, and you have one hand that goes with energy in. And the blessing that you place is through what he's doing when he does that is literally pushing the blessing through his hand. It's literally completing the circuit. It's why he drew him in close. It's why the Ark of the Covenant works, right? All of these things are magnetics and electricity, which is the same thing. And so what he does when he does this is physically making a difference, right? He could just do this and say a blessing for this guy without putting his hand on this side. But this is another proof text for magic. And some people are going to be very upset with that, but magic is very prevalent throughout the Bible. What we have been conditioned to think of it is the witchcraft and the sorcery are the darker aspects of working with the energies of creation. And there are dire consequences for doing so, but it is possible. But there is another side to that. There is healing and helping and growing and growth and all of these things that you do have access to, that if you are using in the correct manner are beneficial and are gifts from God. And if you deny that, then you deny him, and I ain't got no time for that. Let's finish this. I know this is all baseline stuff, and this is lost in a Genesis study, and I'm never going to clip this, but it is what it is, and I am putting the knowledge out there. So that Jacob blessed them and said, by you shall Israel pronounce this blessing. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. So he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Now, this is again a justification for later stuff that is known. That is what happens throughout all of this book. And then Israel said to Joseph, look, I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. And to you, as one who is above your brothers, I give the ridge of land that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow. Well, who are you to do that? Now, if God wants to say yes, okay. And if God appears to Joseph and says, okay, because he has talked to Joseph, right? Specifically. But Israel has to tell him, but look, I'm about to die. God will be with you. Bring you back to the land of your fathers. Why? Why would he want to go back there? Like, not even talking about the landscape, but like, he's the number 2 dude in the kingdom of Egypt. Yeah, let's go back and be a shepherd, right? Why would you even consider that? Why would that be considered a blessing to him? He's living in a better land. Y'all came here because it was not good there. Why are you trying to go? Like, it doesn't make sense. Now, maybe Israel says, I want this land and I want you to go back and all of that. But, like, if God is going to bless the faithful one, who is Joseph, the only one so far that shows any faithfulness, if he's going to bless him, then he's going to give him the best. And then the ones who aren't quite so good, maybe they get something else. And let's get into Genesis 49. And this is going to get a little bit boring, but this is both prophecy and tying up things. And there's like a lot tied in here that I'm really not going to unpack. There's a whole lot in here. Like a whole lot in here. And I can't take the time to unpack this because I'm trying to get through 50 today too. But Jacob called for his sons and said, gather around so that I can tell you what will happen to you in the days to come. Come together and listen, O sons of Jacob, listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power, uncontrolled as the waters. You will no longer excel because you went up to your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. Okay, that's weird. We don't have that story. That is one of those things that just got pulled away. Simeon and Levi are brothers. So is Reuben. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. May I never enter their council. May I never join their assembly, for they kill men in their anger, and hamstring oxen on a whim. Cursed be their anger, for it is strong, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will disperse them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Again, this is prophecy. This is a whole lot of things. But look at this. Like, this is 2 of the blessed tribes. Why not? turn everything over to Joseph and his kin. Why even bring the rest of them? Because it had to be done. This is not somebody that God's going to bless. May I never enter their counsel. This is set by their father. Their swords are weapons of violence. They kill men in anger. They hamstring oxen on a whim. So they cripple, not kill, cripple work animals, because you didn't really eat your work animals, right? Your oxen weren't for steak. They were for plowing. And so they kill oxen on a whim. Just because. Ha ha ha, it's funny. It's funny what we do. This is who God's blessing? Miss me with that. That is not my God. It's not. Judah, your brother shall praise you. Your hands shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a young lion. My son, you return from the prey. Like a lion he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the staff from his feet, until Shiloh comes. I did pop up Shiloh. Is this it? Where did I put it? I did. Is this it? No. Let's go ahead and pop it out again. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and pop out Shiloh right here. Oh, yeah, that was it right there. Okay. Let's go ahead and get directly into the word. Perhaps he whose it is, of uncertain derivation, it's a messianic title. So this is the first real messianic prophecy, and it's coming from Judah. Well, Judah's not the best guy. He's not the firstborn. He's not any of the things that he would need to be the salvation of mankind. Joseph, yes. Ephraim and Manasseh, make your arguments. Judah? Why? It doesn't make sense. Unless there's parts of the story that we don't have here. That's possible. But it doesn't make sense. And until Shiloh comes, until the Messiah comes, until the end, the scepter, the rule, that's what the scepter represents. And the staff is the protection of the people. So the scepter of the rulership or the staff will not depart from Judah. Okay, whatever. Like, we're just going to accept it because it doesn't make any logical sense. The only way that it makes sense is if you look at the previous chapter where we got a brief history of Judah and a little bit of that knowledge that they wanted in there. And then we take it from there and we realize the amalgamation. Then it makes sense. That is all. It doesn't make sense otherwise. And the allegiance of the nations is his. What allegiance of what nations? Nobody's allegiance is with Judah. Whose allegiance is with Judah? Judah is a slave to Pharaoh. Whose allegiance is with him? Whose? At any point, right? Even when Israel was at its peak, its kingdoms were its tribes. It was not like it ran off the other tribes. It killed off other tribes. That happened. And we're going to get into that. There's justifications for those things that we will talk about. Not necessarily like to justify, but the reasons and the arguments for and against, right? We're going to talk about all of that. But at this point, why? Right? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And he ties his donkey to the vine, his colt to the choicest branch. Okay, both of those, not good ideas. I mean, just objectively, right? Maybe it means something different then, right? Maybe tying your colt or your donkey meant alliance with whoever is the most prosperous, right? That's possible, but in practicality, right? Just looking at it in the words it says, which is what we're trying to do, If you tie your donkey to the vine, then the vine gets pulled out the ground. Because donkeys are dumb, right? Mules are a little bit stubborn, but they're not really dumb. Donkeys are dumb. Donkeys are dumb. And so you tie your donkey to the vine, they're strong, but they're dumb, and they would just pull your vine up. They're strong. They're used to plow the earth. And so, why would you tie it to the vine? Why would you tie your colt to the choicest branch? The colt, if you don't know, the colt is a male foal, right? That is a horse. Why would you tie a horse to the best branch? Maybe you can make the argument that the choicest here is the strongest. Okay, that's a good argument. But in the vine, branch, wine, grapes, wine, milk, the branch here implies to me that it is a fruitful branch. Okay, allegory, I can grant allegory, but we're reading as it says. But like even as an allegory, it doesn't make sense. Why the colt? Why would because he can change direction fast? Like colts are fast, colts move. Like it doesn't really make sense. And that's about all the breakdown I'm going to try to do, right? There's a lot in here. I told you, there's a lot to go through, and you just take your time and pick and look and see, well, why logically does this make sense? Some of it does. A lot of it does. Most of it does. But a lot of it, like besides the inconsistency errors and the obvious amalgamations, like overall the stories, overall the history of the sky that is contained within this. It's great. He washes his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Okay. It's a little bit weird, but okay. We got purple, right, and white. Like wine's dark. It's not really black. It's purple. Zebulun shall dwell by the seashore and become a harbor for ships. His border shall extend to Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between the sheepfolds. He saw that his resting place was good and that his land was pleasant. So he bent his shoulder to the burden and submitted to labor as a servant. Issachar sounds like a faithful guy. Dan shall provide justice to his people as one of the tribes of Israel. He will be a snake by the road, a viper in the path that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider tumbles backwards. Okay, that sounds like he's going to be a thorn in the local authorities' side, but not really necessarily justice, but okay, we'll go with it. I await your salvation, O Lord. That's an interesting move. That's an interesting place to put that. Right? Gad will be attacked by raiders, but he will attack their heels. Asher's food will be rich. He shall provide royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine by spring whose branches scale the wall. The archers attacked him with bitterness. They aimed at him in hostility. Yet he steadied his bow, and his strong arms were tempered by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. In the name of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, by the God of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you, with blessings of heaven above, with blessings of the depths below, and blessings of the breast and womb. The blessings of your father have surpassed the blessings of the ancient mountains, and the bounty of the everlasting hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, and on the brow of the prince of his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the plunder. Okay, so again, you have all of this. I'm brushing through things except for Judah, right? This is Simeon and Levi. Reuben, you defiled yourself. We don't have that story. Simeon and Levi. We don't have the story of them being mean. We don't have the story of them being cruel. We have a brief history of Judah. We have almost nothing on Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher. Like none of these. The only ones we really have a story on are Joseph and Judah. And out of the two, one has been faithful and one is not. If you were to choose one, which one would it be to bless? If you were in the place of everlasting Almighty God Himself, and you were to choose one of these two men to bear the redemption of all mankind and be known as the lion, who would it be? Would it be Judah, who went to the temple prostitute? Or would it be Joseph, who denied the wife of another man? Would it be Judah, who did deceptive things? Or would it be Joseph, who has been faithful in all things 3 times? Who is the root that you are going to draw from? Who is the vine that you will graft people into? I'm asking because I know for me where things went wrong, and I know why they went wrong, and I even know that that's part of the plan, and that now there is a time for revelation to come through and for people to see things as they are and as He wants them to be seen. I am but a vessel for Him to speak through. He told me in no uncertain terms, like, I tried not to do this Bible study. When I saw what I am saying here, I was like, whoa, nope, count me out. I ran like Jonah. And He made me realize that no, it is time. If I am going to be a good and faithful servant, if I am going to do what I have been called to do and to help people to find Him, that I have to do this. And so that is what I am doing. But I do not take pleasure in it other than the fact that His will is being done. But I know a lot of people's heart's going to break. That does not mean God does not love you. All right, so, and Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the plunder. These are the tribes of Israel, 12 in all, and this was what their father said to them. He blessed them, and he blessed each one with a suitable blessing. We don't have all the stories. We will try to find as many of them as possible and to discuss them. I'm going to do the Bible read-through before I get to any of the other stuff, but we're going to do other stuff too. We're going to talk about the Enuma Elish and the fact that the 3 descendants of Noah are in that book before the first time Genesis was a thing. We will talk about that. But for now, we're going to go ahead and finish up Genesis with Genesis 50. Mourning and burial for Jacob. And then Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So they embalmed him, taking the 40 days required to complete the embalming. And the Egyptians mourned him for 70 days. The Egyptians mourned Israel when they found Hebrews detestable. Like, again with the consistency. And like, I get the fact that you're turning this around for your people, and that's cool for your people. But for everybody now, even the people who think this is their people, pay attention to what's being said in these things. That's all I'm asking. Like, don't ever just take me and run with it. Do some research. Make sure I'm telling the truth. It's hard for me to lie when I'm just reading it, but make sure I'm doing right. Like, I'm willing to be wrong. Make sure you're willing to be wrong too. And when the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, if I have found favor in your eyes, please tell Pharaoh that my father made me swear an oath when he said I am about to die. You must bury me in the tomb that I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now, let me go and bury my father and then return. And Pharaoh replied, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do. And then Joseph went to bury his father, and all the servants of Pharaoh accompanied him. The elders of Pharaoh's household and all the elders of the land of Egypt, along with all of Joseph's household and his brothers and his father's household. Only their children and flocks and herds were left in Goshen. This sounds to me like a ransom situation. This sounds to me like maybe Joseph was trying to set his people free and Pharaoh was saying no, right? Because he took all the men and left all the flocks which belonged to Pharaoh, even though all the men belonged to Pharaoh too, right? We've already talked about that. That was in 47. And now he's taking all of this people plus all of Pharaoh's staff. Pharaoh's cool with that. He's just like, yeah, take everybody in the land except for your kids and your livestock and leave them here. Because, we want to make sure you come back. But go ahead, do what you got to do. Come back. It seems like that type of situation, right? Like, that's what it reads like. Like, otherwise, why would Pharaoh send his entire staff? Why would the entire, all of the households and all of their servants? Like, who's watching the flock? Just the children? The children are home alone? Are the wives home? We don't even have that, but I'm assuming that's part of the household. Like, what else is in the household besides the children, the husband, and the wife? Like, that's it. So if the kids are left, and he's taking his whole household, then who is it? It's him and the wife. Him and the wife are going, the kids are staying. Okay, whatever. We'll take it. And so they go. Only that was left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen alike went up with him, and it was an exceedingly large procession. Across the river and through the desert, back to my grandfather's house we go. Like, are you kidding me? They took all of this in a peaceful trip to go bury a man 500-600 miles away. Like, it's not an insurmountable distance, but man, you're traveling through the desert. I just find it hard. I do. Especially if you're planning on going back. It'd be one thing, you're going home. You're never planning on coming back? Yeah, okay. I can see carrying the body. You've got it embalmed. It's not stinking, right? The practices then was mummification, desiccation, right? You're in the desert, you dry everything out. And so it was a desiccated body. You can wrap it up, bring it home, no problem. You're traveling through the desert, it's not going to get rained on. And so if you're going home and you're not coming back, sure, you're going to go 500-600 miles. But if you're coming back through the desert, you know how much it would cost to feed this many people on a trip through the desert on foot? Like, for real. Like, we're talking months of travel in the desert. You're not just going and hunting with a party this large. And you don't have your flocks. You left them at home with your kids. There's something fishy here. And people gloss over that. They look at it and they're like, yeah, whatever. They don't pay any attention because this helps break the narrative. And you cannot break the narrative. If you break the narrative, then what are we going to do? Are you saying there's no God? No, absolutely not. There is a God. What I'm saying is, despite the best efforts of man, God's will comes through. And he has used this to save many people, to bring them to him in genuine love and worship. There has been many who have used this book to say this is enough. I have sacrificed this lamb, that's enough. I can continue to go sleep with my brother's wife or my neighbor's wife, and I'll just sacrifice another lamb next week. Or somebody else has made the sacrifice for me, so I can continue to sleep with my neighbor's wife, or to cheat my client, or whatever it happens to be, and then I'll just go to church and say I'm sorry, and it's covered. We're good. That justification doesn't work anymore. That justification is no longer enough. Once you make it through what I am doing here, you understand that you are responsible to God for your actions. Whether or not it is written down in a law, you know if it is right or wrong. If you are a true servant of the Lord, if you have truly asked him to come into your life, then you know right from wrong. It is written on your heart. And you know when you deviate from it. And if you choose to, you choose to. And you can. That's another thing. No one can pry you from his grip. When you have said, Lord, I am sorry. I am a sinner. I love you. Can you please change my ways? I am truly regretful for what I do. You are gripped tighter than anything possible. Nothing can pry you from his grip. But you can come out of it. You can decide for yourself to serve the wrong way. And by the wrong way, I don't mean choosing the wrong religion, right? But once you belong to God, there are things that are forbidden to you. There are. And if you choose willingly to serve those things, then those things are your God, and you were not really sorry for what you did. That does not mean that you will not slip, right? If you slip, if you're an alcoholic, and that's an easy one to talk about because there's a lot of us. And so if you're an alcoholic and you drink, that's a slip. You didn't mean to, right? Most of the time it's a crisis situation, and it just kind of happens. And that's how life is, and God understands that. But then, if you say, you know what, well, I've already slept, let me go over here and buy a fifth, and let me go over here and get another one, and then the next thing you know, you're just laying on back. That is a choice, and that is the difference between just a slip and actually falling away from God. Everybody slips every once in a while. Everybody has stumbles. Everybody has falls. Everybody has something that they are not proud about. But that doesn't mean that that has to become who you are. And the only requirement is that you turn that around and ask for help from him, no man. All right, let's wrap this up. I got off on one of my soapboxes. Okay. And so Joseph takes all of these people through the desert with all of these supplies, leaves his children at home with his flocks. And when the Canaanites of the land saw the morning at the threshing floor, and when they reached the threshing floor of Atad, which is across the Jordan, they lamented and wailed loudly. And Joseph mourned for his father 7 days. And when the Canaanites of the land saw the morning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a solemn ceremony of mourning by the Egyptians." Thus the place across the Jordan is called Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did as he had charged them. They carried him into the land of Canaan and buried him at the cave at Machpelah in the field near Mamre, which Abram had purchased from Ephron the Hittite as a burial site. After Joseph had buried his father, he returned to Egypt with his 2 brothers and all who had gone with him to bury his father. And Joseph comforts his brothers. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph bears a grudge? Then he will surely repay us for all the evil that we did to him." So they sent word to Joseph, saying, "Before he died, your father commanded. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I beg you, please, forgive the transgression of your sin of your brothers, for they did you wrong. So now, Joseph, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father." I know. This is one of those things that's overlooked. Because most people do not consider this a big deal, right? And maybe I'm just a weird one. I am always willing to accept that. But what if Joseph bears a grudge? They decided as men to lie about what their father said on his deathbed and invoke the name of God, right? The God of your father, right? So that is please, like that's tying that to God. So again, what we have here is Joseph's brothers who share equally in the inheritance with his children, and not him, with his children. They act unhonorably, like without honor. That's without honor. They're scared. They're like, maybe he could have killed you when you first came to Egypt. He could have killed you the second time you came to Egypt. He could have killed you at any point during your stay. Instead, he accepted you and your kin as slaves despite the fact that they had made provisions for this, despite the fact that, like, we've already hammered them points. I'm not going to go. So, again, this is just another reinforcement that if there was going to be a line out of all of them, it would be Joseph. And so, when their message came to them, Joseph wept. His brothers also came to him, bowed down before him, and said, "We are your slaves." That's already happened, but here we go again. And Joseph replied, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? As for you, what you intended against me for evil, God intended for good, in order to accomplish a day like this, to preserve the lives of many people. Therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." So Joseph reassured his brothers and spoke kindly to them. Again, we see the faithfulness of God shown through this man. But he's not the one that's blessed. His children are accepted as part of the inheritance, but he's not. Now Joseph and his father's household remained in Egypt, and Joseph lived to the age of 110. He saw Ephraim's sons to the third generation, and indeed the sons of Machir, son of Manasseh, were brought up on Joseph's knees. This is again one of those stories that we don't have that were part of the lore that needed to be included in the entire reason why Manasseh was blessed in the place of Ephraim. And then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely visit you and bring you up from this land to the land he has promised on oath to Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, all of whom we have talked about extensively, and none of whom really should have been blessed." And Joseph made the sons of Israel take an oath and said, "God will surely attend to you, and then you must carry my bones up from this place." And so Joseph died at the age of 110, and they embalmed his body and placed it in a coffin in Egypt. And that, my friends, is going to be the end of Genesis. We will be getting into Exodus next. We will be doing the same thing in Exodus that we did here. So if I stepped on your toes in Genesis, just wait, it gets wild in the next book, because we are insisting on a literal reading. What they say here is what we are going to talk about. And it is not what everybody else says. What I see here is what I am telling you, and it is not what we have been led to believe, what we have been guided and indoctrinated into believing. I know I step on a lot of toes with this. I want you to know that it is never intentional. My whole goal is to tell you the truth. It is not even really to convince you of it. I have been told to put it out there. I'm not really going to hang around in the comments and argue. If you want to argue in the comments and you are respectful and you have factual information that I am unaware of, I will address it. I will take that into my knowledge. That is what I am doing here. I thought I knew that there was one way to get to heaven. I thought I knew that one man had come down for the sin and salvation of all mankind. And I was wrong. Jesus tells you himself that if you blaspheme against me, it's no big deal. But if you blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, it is, because God knows he was not a God. Jesus knows that he was not divine. We will show that through the rest of this Bible study. We will. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very complicated topic. I know that I am unraveling laces that have been tied for a very long time, and I apologize for hurting your feelings if I do so while I am doing it. But as I have already said in this video, I don't have a choice. I tried to deny this, and my life got worse. When I embraced this, my life has gotten better in the ways that God himself blesses. He blesses with peace. He blesses with abundance. He blesses with comfort. He blesses with love. He blesses with building up. And in every step, every manner of my life, that has happened since I have embraced this. That does not mean that I am monetarily happy, right? Because I am not. It does not mean that everything in my life is perfect, because it is not, and it will never be. But that's okay. We are not meant to be perfect here. We are meant to try here. We are meant to walk up the spiral of choice, to do all that we can, every single effort that we can possibly expend, to reach the light and away from the dark. That is our entire purpose. All the trials and tribulations that come along with it, all of those steps and stumbles and mistakes and problems, that is all opportunities, every single one of them, and every single one of them you agreed to before you got here. If you don't know what that's about, you really should be going through the playlist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me. I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.